This is Back of the Net and Beyond. My name's Danny Thomas. Today I'm going to be speaking to former teammate Lee Fowler, who played for Coventry City, Huddersfield, and Wales U21s. How's it going, mate? You okay?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, all good, all good. You're looking well. You haven't changed.
No, I'm still. I have a little bit, mate. A little bit lack of hair now, mate, and more hair on my beard, I think, than my head now.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. How's life at the minute?
It's all right, mate. I was just talking off camera there, mate. It's we fell victim to COVID, me and my family, so we're just trying to adjust to that as a family and just sticking together and trying to get through it.
All good. And in terms of yourself, obviously you retired from football kind of a few years ago, and I believe you're now manager of Radcliffe. So talk to me about kind of that process, how you find the management, because obviously you played football, you had a sustained career, and then now you've gone to the other side of the fence, so to speak. So how you find the management?
It was good, mate. It was always going to be a natural progression for me. Pushing boundaries, if that makes sense. I always ask questions why we do things, to understand for myself, really, to have a justification behind certain things, what you do. And as you know, mate, sometimes managers are just ego driven, and because they've got the power, they think they can sort of just direct you into a way of thinking without actually having your own thought approach with it. And that's the one thing I've changed since I've been a manager myself, mate, is that I give the players the ownership, and I ask them to ask questions. I give them the platform to speak. Managers we've had, mate, who are just authoritative, and as soon as you question anything, you're classed as a bad egg, which is not the case. We're just human beings who want to know what we're doing.
You mentioned obviously you like to give the players their own input. Is that kind of reflective of how you were as a player? Because I only played with you kind of briefly when I was at Kettering, and I was kind of obviously struggling to find a club, and then I came to Kettering and I was unfit and whatever else, but still managed to have a few games within the team. So I always remember you kind of being one of the vocal ones. And when I say vocal, I don't mean kind of loud and brash. I mean someone who always quite studious within the game. You studied the game, you knew the game. You obviously was a decent player as well, but you always ask questions, whether it be before the game, before training, kind of half time, after the game. You're always analysing. That's what I always thought about you anyway. So I don't know if that's right or not. That was just my impression. So have you then taken that with you into management as well?
I think it's part of my my DNA as a person anyway, mate. I think not just on football, out of football. I need to know what I'm doing, where I'm doing, how I'm doing it, why I'm doing it. It gives you sort of structure and routine. And every manager I played, and even when I was 14 and 13 and in the Premier League, I'd be telling managers I'm the best player there and why am I playing. And the reason was because I generally believed it as well. And if I wanted them to sort of tell me something rather than just being said, because as a footballer you're institutionalized to, you have to be in at 9 o'clock, you wear this kit, you leave at 5 o'clock in the youth team, you can't do this till you go to bed. You can't go to bed until you do your jobs. It's very much it's like the army football, isn't it? Really, when you're growing up, and that's why there's so many similarities between the mental health in terms of the PDST and footballers in general. The way I do things is completely different. I flip it completely upside his head. Working with Timpson's, I had 2 years out of football, and I think I needed the break away from it to give me that mental. Completely shut down, but they do a thing called upside down management. Now, how it is although John Timpson's the main boss, the upside down management is, well, we're the managers and he's the one who gets the byproduct of it. Right. So without us being happy and without us being like having a decision making within what we're doing, if we're unhappy, we will make the company money, then John will make money. So as he makes it, is it called upside down management? He makes us the managers to make our own decision. And I don't know if you follow the Timpson story. They employ a lot of ex-cons.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff they're doing is unique, really, in terms of how they do their management.
I remember watching a show based on their structure and stuff, and like you said there, they employ ex kind of prison inmates and things like that, which is good. It gives them an avenue once they've come out back into civvy street, back into employment essentially, and it's a good kind of structure that they've got there. In terms of yourself, you touched on a couple of things there, kind of speaking up and being labelled as a bad egg, and sometimes you get players who they always want to know more. Obviously, want to know why they're doing certain things in training, and again, after games, you may want to kind of ask questions, or you may want to find out why you haven't been playing or whatever. And sometimes managers wouldn't give you that. And again, you also mentioned about kind of upside down management, and I always believe that regardless of the industry you're in, if you're the owner or manager, the people beneath you, the people that are actually essentially in inverted commas working for you, you actually need them more than they need you. Because if you're, like, say you're the manager now at Radcliffe, you need your players more than they need you. Because obviously, I hope this doesn't happen, but if you get sacked or if you decide to leave and go elsewhere, the new man comes in and they'll still be there essentially. Obviously, there's factors within that, players may leave or whatever, but if they're playing well, invariably, you're going to get noticed for obviously how well they're playing. So if they're reflecting how you are as a manager, essentially, sometimes, as we know as players, sometimes you go out and you obviously aim to play well, and sometimes it just doesn't work. But invariably, a team that's doing well is generally a team that's working for a manager that they believe in. And I always felt that the best managers for me were ones that just let me be free and express myself. Didn't want to be restricted as a player, didn't want to be kind of rigid and kind of like regimented. Just let me go and play. And with that comes with more responsibility, I felt, because when players in the team hear that the gaffer just says, right, you've got a free role or you're free to roam essentially, it basically means that you need to play well, because invariably if you don't, you're the first one to get dragged off. So it swings and roundabouts, and it makes sense what you're saying there. I don't know kind of what your thoughts are on that.
No, it's how I lead with my team. So as you said before, mate, I was never taught how to play football. It's just something that come natural to me. The managers who actually did try and coach me, they probably made me worse. The best managers just said to me, go and play, go and enjoy yourself, be free. So what I say to our lads here is less is more. You know, you get people over coaching, over analysing terminology and buzzwords, and I'm very much laid back, mate, in terms of this is how it is. If I've got two ways of playing, in possession, do what you want. And that there's only a couple of people who've got structured sort of routines, and that's the centre halves really. You know, I don't know if you've seen our team at the moment, where going forward, mate, we're like Man City.
I've seen it, yeah.
We're also like Kevin Keegan at Newcastle, we're conceding goals. So all I say to the players is, listen, if you give me out of possession, you work hard, I will give you the freedom to do the rest of it. But ultimately, if they don't do that bit out of possession, I will just get rid of them. Because I'm giving a lot of freedom to these players, which no other manager will be doing. You know, I let them go and express themselves. I let them go and be themselves. I let them go and, you know, if they do a trick, they do a megs. As long as there's justification or reason behind the actual thought process of doing it, that's all for me. And if it doesn't work, so what? As long as they work hard to get the ball back, as long as they do the outside bit. So if they give me mine, I will give them. So, and that's what I say with me, Dan, is I always get I always buy the human first, and the player will follow. So the human in you will come and play for me, and then the player in you will follow anyway, because I've got you as a human. And every club I've been at, my management seems to have gone down well with players. Purely because I've probably had about 30 odd managers myself, mate, and we know what we don't want to hear.
That's massive, mate. I mean, you mentioned a few things there, and from a player's perspective, then your players must be buzzing. It's an ideal scenario when a manager comes in, regardless of the previous manager, a manager comes in and you're always kind of thinking, well, what's he or she going to be like? If you're coming in and saying, kind of, go and do what you want on the pitch, express yourself, feel free to kind of do little tricks and that, but out of possession, I want you to work hard. That is a perfect scenario, because if the manager's giving you that freedom to play when you've got the ball, when you haven't got the ball, you're going to want to get it back as soon as possible anyway, just so you can go and express yourself. So it's a win-win from the players' perspective and also the managers. Obviously, you need the players to have the ability, and I've seen a few clips that you put on LinkedIn of goals that your team has scored, and I watched one the other day. It was about 3 or 4 weeks ago. and it was literally from your box, so your defensive box. You played out the back and you played through the midfield, and it wasn't just random. You could see it was kind of structured in the way the players knew what they were doing. I was watching the players make runs off the ball as well, creating space for others, and then you ended up scoring off it. And that's not by accident. And that literally reminds me of how you used to play when you were at Wrexham and kind of Kettering and stuff. And I always remember you kind of being in and around everything that was going on. And you'd always want the ball off the back four. You'd always, you wanted it not just to express yourself, but it was a case of, I want to start something. So you were always the catalyst. I always remember playing against you, and it was always a case of, like, you need to take care of him, because once you take care of him, essentially you're going to take care of the team. But obviously it wasn't as simple as that. But for those that don't know, the type of player you were was like, without bigging you up too much, you were kind of a bit like an Iniesta, kind of Xavi type mold. And what frustrates me is because we know as players, I was kind of Leicester and you were at Coventry, whatever else, and we've come from the higher echelons, if you want to call it, of football, and we've dropped down. It's frustrating because I can see other players who probably look at you, me, or whatever and think, well, other managers may think, well, he's always been at Kettering, he's always been at Wrexham, and that's kind of where he joined when he left school. And it's not always like that. And it's like, there's players in those lower leagues. Jamie Vardy is one example who you played with, and we'll touch on that later on. But there's so many talented players, especially now, more so than when we were playing, and beyond that as well. Playing in those leagues. What are your thoughts on that? Because obviously, you know what it's like to play in those leagues after you've come from higher up, and you know what it takes to get out of those leagues, if that makes sense. What are your thoughts on that?
I think with my situation, I was never really capable to maintain that level. Ability-wise, 100%. Ability-wise, I should have played in the Premier League my whole career. Mentally-wise, I was never able, as I said, ability-wise, I could have played the Premier League easily. I even still look at it now, and I still believe ability-wise, I could still do it now. But the mental capabilities of what I was at that time, I only got till I was 28 or 27, when I realised who I was as a person. Now, so I wasted sort of from the age of 14 to the age of, I don't know, 18. You know, I was the best player in Britain, or probably Europe, I'd say, at my age. But I was already done between 16 and 18 anyway. Right. So no matter how I thought technically how good I was, I never had the mental capacity to see it through. Like, you look at people like Darren Fletcher, who was my age group. Now, he was awful at Man United. If you look at his career compared to my career, no, I wouldn't say he's awful, but he knew what he was. He was a worker, grafted, and he had a manager in Ferguson who loved him. Now, when we come through my age, like your Choppers, your Fletchers, and people like that, you know, they couldn't lace some of our boots through at Coventry at the time. You know, McJeffrey, Davenport, myself. But ultimately, they were more focused and taught the right ways to deal with things, other than, you know, most footballers are wired up completely different. And that's the big. But I only learned who I was when I was 27. So, you know, when I come out at 27, that's where I went from being in a non-league back up to League One. You know, I turned down 3 championship teams at 28. Stayed with Dean Saunders at Wrexham. Then I Fleetwood. But I've always had opportunities to go back up to the higher levels. But when you're on good money at 17, I remember meeting Dean Smith, who was the Walsall manager. He offered me £700 a week in League One, and I couldn't fathom it. I was like, "You part time?" And he was sort of annoyed with me by saying it. And I was like, "Well, my whole career in the conference, the minimum I've been on is like 1,500-1,600 quid a week. And all of a sudden, you go to Walsall in League One, which the style of play he played was unbelievable. I couldn't grasp the drop in money to go up 3 levels higher.
Makes no sense.
Makes no sense. Not adaptive in my brain. Do you know what I mean? It didn't make no sense. And at that time, I needed the money, so money was important to me. So,
and that's it. And again, that's the side of football that people don't see. Sometimes they see people turning down moves, and you kind of think, well, why is that happening? I remember obviously all of those things that you mentioned, and obviously players talking, you get wind of certain things. And I've been in that scenario, not to that extent, but when you've got a family, and obviously you're playing in the lower leagues and you're picking up X, Y, and Z. I was never at that level in terms of picking up that amount of money. But I can understand why you wouldn't. Why would you go from, say, the conference or, I don't know, League Two to then like a League One or Championship team on half the money. Just doesn't make any sense. So again, I can understand completely why you do that. Other people may not, but this is why I do the podcast, just to give people an insight into what it's actually like. And it's not all rosy. We've all been there. We've changed in porter cabins and things like that. And again, maybe I'll touch on that a little bit later, how that kind of affects your mentality. And when I say mentality, I don't mean like mental health. I just mean your outlook on the game. And sometimes you look back and think, okay, well, I used to be like, I don't know, I used to have my kit laid out for me. Now I'm having to wash my own kit. All of those things affect your performance. So we'll touch on those things a little bit later on, but I want to talk to you about your day-to-day life, like in management now. What's your typical day? You get up in the morning, what next?
So obviously I'm full-time here, lower part-time club. I did have a job as a delivery driver, and I just wasn't concentrating. You know, I know I'm going to be a Football League manager. So for me to be a Football League manager, I'm either, as I was as a player, I'm either all in or nothing. I can't do two different things because you're compensating one job for the other job, and I give everything I possibly got to this job. And it's literally, it's non-stop, mate. You know, you're speaking to agents, you're speaking to players. I am very close to my players. But the difference is with me being this close to the players, which, you know, some people think is a negative. It's not. It's, you know, I ring them, ask if they're okay, if they're a baby, or the family, how you're dealing with COVID. And ultimately, if I needed to give them a rollicking or I needed to have a big ding-dong with them, I'm equally comfortable to do that. And I think what the lads are realising now with myself is that 1 minute I could be your best friend, and the next thing we can have the biggest argument, and then 2 seconds later I'll be your best friend again. It's nothing personal. I've just got to be so focused to being a Football League manager. And that's the reason why the lads want to play for me, is if you're being dropped, you're not being rested. You're being dropped for a reason. I'll tell you the reason you're being dropped. If you're doing fantastic, I'll pull you in and tell you you're doing fantastic. You know, and there's no middle ground for me. You know, I'm either all in with you and I'll give you my last penny, or I'll give you nothing and I'll just completely cut you out of the way I am. But if you give me everything, work hard on the pitch, I will give you everything back in return. And you know, you got to deal with the board members, mate. You got to deal with the chairman, the owner, staff, physios. You're dealing with agents. You're dealing with LinkedIn. You know, always searching around for the next player. Or it's ultimately, you know, you have got to keep loyal to the people you've brought in, but you've also got to look at what the Joneses are doing as well, and you've got to always look for that next player. Ultimately, you know, if the club are going to do anything well, we've got to sort of be a buy to sell club as well. You know, we've recruited really well, with a mixture of youth and experience. And I think it's key. I think it's key for us how we're doing it. So,
as a player, mate, like you're my ideal manager, not because it seems like you're well invested in your players, but also in the club as well. I know what you're like anyway. I've seen and been around you, so I know full well, without even you telling me this, I know what your input would be in that club from top to bottom. I can imagine you talking to the chairman just like he's one of your mates, and you'll tell him how you feel. I think that's amazing. And then you'll talk to the players the same. But then equally, you'll talk to the chef if you've got a chef. Talk to the physio the same, the groundsman. I can just imagine you being like, let's say, call it an Arsene Wenger of Radcliffe. Like you're invested in everything, just like Fergie was at Man U. And from a player's perspective, if your phone's ringing and it's your manager, normally in our day it would be a case of he's probably calling you because maybe a club's come in for you, fine, or maybe calling you just because you may not be in the team or something. But it was never a call to say, oh, how are you getting on? Unless something's happening and it's kind of everyone's in kind of conversation about what's happening within your family or whatever, or something's happening and everyone's well aware of it. A manager's not really going to ring you and say, oh, how you doing today? Like, thought you'd be well or whatever. It very rarely happens. I'm assuming it happens more so now than it did in our day anyway. So it's really good what you're doing there from what I can hear anyway. Again, in terms of playing style, I've touched on kind of what I saw, clips on LinkedIn and stuff like that. And obviously that reflects on how you were as a player. I'm assuming the fans, obviously when fans were allowed to go and watch, and I'm assuming they obviously liked what they saw as well.
Yeah, it's been a tricky transition period for me, really. In terms of, they got rid of Frank Sinclair and John Macken. They brought in two interim managers before me who ripped the soul out of the club. and then I took over just before COVID, and I didn't really have a chance really, because no matter who they brought in, you could have brought in Klopp in and they wouldn't have cared. You know, I was the end product of what happened to the beginning product, and they are seeing, you know, listen, we had the best footballing team in the league by a country mile. You know, all you got to do is listen to other managers. I've been saying it since day one. The way we can play both ways as well. We can play physically, or we can play sort of total football. And the accolades are coming, mate. We are turning it around now in terms of I've got my full squad back. You know, the first month I didn't have a training ground. We didn't have no training ground, mate. We used to do yoga at the club. I had 5 in my back 4 completely out.
Wow.
And, you know, we did lose a couple of games in the initial period. And I've said it from day one, mate. As you said there, you know, with me, if you're poor, I'll tell you I'm poor. But if we're good, I'm going to tell you I'm good. And when I get my full team there, you know, I've seen a lot of managers chop and changing already. And, you know, I stick to the people I brought in. I brought them in for a reason. And you are right, mate. I'll have the same conversation with the chairman as if I was talking to the ladies behind the bar, or the physio, or to any of the fans. You know, I'll give everybody the same respect they deserve. But ultimately as well, and this is probably one of the reasons why they do like me as well, is if there is something needs to be said, I will say it. I won't hold back on it. You know, there's obviously you've got to manage up as well, not just manage down, which is part of the learning process. Because obviously when you're a player, you can just lose your head, and you've got no other consequences to think. But when you're a manager, you can lose the change room within the wrong word, and you can also lose your job if you speak to the people above you in the wrong way as well. So it's all part of a learning course, mate, and that's why you read all the researches on the books, and you do stuff about psychology books. I read quite a lot of stuff. I invest in, you know, Bielsa and Klopp and Pep, and I take my own little bits off them, and ultimately I just use my experience of the negative stuff that we've encountered over the years. Use that just to guide you in a ball, really, to say, right, this is who I am, this is what I'm about, this is what you're going to get off me. And I'm not saying I'm the best coach in the world, but what I am is a very good person. And if you want to be a good person, an honest person, I'll make you a better person and a better football player.
That's massive, mate. And just to touch on something that I did see, aside from how you guys play on LinkedIn, I don't know if it was, I think it was pre-season, and I don't know if you went away somewhere, you did like one of those kind of get-togethers where you bring in everyone together and you kind of grow as a team. We've all been there. And I think you wrote something about kind of, you wanted your players to open up in front of the group, which, as you all know, it can be quite difficult. Sometimes people don't like to talk in front of people. We've all seen it. The loudest one in the room, sometimes you assume that person is going to be really confident, and then it materializes that they're not. And so sometimes you look at the person who maybe doesn't really say much, and then they're really, really confident. They're just quietly confident. And that was kind of me in the dressing room anyway. That's how I was. I was always quietly confident. But in terms of just touching back on what I mentioned, I think I saw something that you wrote in LinkedIn, and it basically about the players opening up, and I think you opened up to the players as well. So it wasn't just a case of you saying, right, lads, it's your turn to speak now, and I'm going to sit back like the gaffer and watch. It was like, we're all in it together. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. You obviously tell each other about yourself as well. So talk to me about that. What was your thought process there?
So I watched it. I watched it on, I think it was the Harlequins pre-season. 2018, I think it was, or it might have been one of the England trips anyway, where they all opened up and been together about it. And it was something which is important to me anyway, in terms of, you know, you wait till the Christmas do, and then all of a sudden you go, oh, let's go and have a Christmas do, and we're best mates, and it's load of nonsense. You've just spent 4 months with somebody you don't even know a thing about. So, you know, we went camping. There was like 32 of us. The chairman was there, the board members were there, the physios, everyone in that club was there, and everybody told their story. And it was important that it was quite emotional. People were crying. But the common theme was of pain, rejection. But when you're listening to the stories and you resonate with each other, it's quite powerful, because, as you said before, there was lads who we brought in who, you know, had issues with their baby mama, who was like, you're not seeing the baby, blah, 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 take you to court. Then one of the other young lads who we didn't even know had a baby was like, yeah, that's what's happened to me and my missus. We were like, well, hang on, we had a baby. He's only 19.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you learn more about your team. That that 2-day camping trip, mate, was superb. And, you know, that's where we've got to now as a group, is we can say anything we want to each other. And, you know, I've seen people fighting. I've seen, you know, other clubs we're fighting. We're here, you can sort of, when something gets said, it's left there. Do you know what I mean? It's not carried on, or there's no car schools, there's no into bitching. Everything's just said outright. And we said, right, no worries, we move on. I think that's what that trip done. It opened people up a little bit outside their comfort zone and connected in a way that I've not seen at many football clubs. And, you know, I've had quite a few football clubs myself, and the togetherness and work rate of this team is quite unique.
That's amazing, mate. And again, that you can only, out of that circumstance, you can only move forward into greatness. There's no way that you can go back and, like, say, regress on going forward as a team in terms of on the pitch and off the pitch. Because once everyone puts their input in collectively, there's an energy there, there's a connection. Naturally, you grow together as a family. So that's really, really interesting that you've done that. And again, there's not many players that have been through that experience, not many managers that would have that insight, especially in the lower leagues. We know what it's like in the lower leagues. You don't really get that from managers, essentially. So again, that's really commendable that you've obviously had that thought process. Now, you played for some decent managers. You mentioned you've had quite a lot, football teams that you played for, essentially. One of the managers that kind of springs to mind is Dean Saunders. I know you played for others, but do you ever draw on those, like, past connections and get some advice and tips and hints and stuff like that?
With me, because I'm always learning anyway, since I've been a manager myself, you learn from every situation. You know, I don't ring any other managers for advice. I'm quite confident who I am. I know I do things way different to other managers. The way I am, the intensity I do things, and I push buttons every now and again, put my arm on. So ultimately, I can't really ask anyone for advice, because what I'm doing is quite unique in terms of how I am as a person. And that's not to say I'm like the next best thing. There's nowhere near that. But what I'm trying to say is that how I go about my business will not be the same as another manager does his business. So I wouldn't put myself in a generic box where you could say, well, he's like this type of manager, or, you know, emotional reason. Well, just deal with the emotional side of it, really. Of course, you listen to, you go back on how they treated you and how you do things, and can you take good things off them and bad things off them, and you know, different bits and bobs. And of course you do. It's natural to do so. I think that's what guides you. But ultimately, I'm that secure and that confident in myself as a person that I just believe in my own way, and my own way is going to get me where I need to be.
That's awesome. Talk to me about your debut, because I know you made, I think it was your COD debut as a young teenager. And I remember hearing about you before. So I'm a couple of years older than you, I believe. So I believe I was at Leicester at the time, and, you know, as you're growing up, you hear about, oh, this kid at this club's decent and whatever. And we all knew about, like, McSheffrey at Cov, and then we heard about yourself, and I think maybe Ben Mackey, was it? So we all knew kind of. I remember hearing about games when you had played in the youth team. I was kind of, like I said, a bit older, and you speak to the youth team boys, and they were like, yeah, Lee Fowler did X, Y, and Z on this player, and it's like, what? Who is this guy? So talk to me about your time at Cov. Obviously, I know you were well regarded there. It's kind of my local team, essentially. Talk to me about that youth team and obviously making your debut and stuff.
It was quite a. It was a tricky time, mate, to be honest with you. It was filled with a lot of joy, but a lot of pain. I was ready to play at 15. As I said to you before, I was doing things in games that, you know, you see, you don't see. You know what I mean? I was playing against men in training. I was on the bench when I was 15 or 16 against Newcastle. I constantly asked Gordon Strachan, I need to play. You know, youth team games, you were doing things to try and stimulate yourself. You know, like I was doing like tricks, but everything seemed to come off for me. But in my mind, I knew I was ready for a next level, not under 16s, 17s, or because what they used to do is they'd play you, because I was 15, they'd play you in the 17s, or they put you on the bench for the 19s. Then on the Sunday, you'd have to play in the under 15s and 16s. But all because I didn't go to school, I was training with the first team. And you're thinking like, well, where do I sit on the? I didn't know where I sat. I wasn't in
Yeah.
any group, but I was always in a group, and that confused me. And I only realised later that was probably where the sort of, how can I say, it's probably where that I got that sort of. I wasn't a loner because I got, as I said, I used to love the lads. Lads love me, banter, and I was just so like on my own. Like I don't, it's hard to explain to some people how I see football. Like, when I made my Cov debut, I got injured for like a year or 15 months, I think. When they got relegated from the Premier League, there's a few lads who played in the Premier League which were nowhere near good enough to play even in reserve football. But because they got relegated, they played them all through, and I was meant to play I was meant to play the last 10 games of the season, and I think it was Carlton Palmer. He just said he didn't want to play with me.
Wow.
Obviously I'm only 15 or 16 years of age, but I generally do think I would have made a massive difference, and that's where my mentality was at that age. And the people who train with me, like your Robbie Keanes, your John Artons, your Bellamy's, and they're the ones who were saying to Strachan in the end, you've got to play this kid because he just doesn't care. You always like, mate, with the fear. As soon as fear hits you, I'm lucky that I've never been fearful of anything really. And I used to take down to a football field with me, and I just thought my football pitch was like a paint, like a canvas for me, where I could go and express myself. And that's how I see football. And I try and say to the lads now is how I see football is, like Ronnie O'Sullivan playing snooker.
Yeah.
When he's playing snooker, he's like, he's part of the red ball, but he's already on 147 in his brain because he's already in the next couple of shots. I said, but ultimately the levels we're dealing with and some of the players we've dealt with, they're more like pool players. Right, I'll pop the yellow ball. Right, where's the next yellow ball?
Yeah.
And ultimately times that's where it can get a little bit sort of where I was. And as I said, mate, I did have regrets, mate. It was down to myself that I didn't do what I should have done. And I've got no one else to blame really, mate. And especially now I've got a young family who would have benefited from the accolades and the financial reward if I would have met them previously. But would have meant I would have been the same person as I am now as I was then? Maybe not.
Exactly. I mean, what I would say is don't be too hard on yourself, because it's easy to look back and say, oh, what if or whatever. And that's just the natural kind of human being nature to do that. But again, if you had made your debut at 15 when you were knocking on Strachan's door, and you maybe, say, if you sustained, I don't know, half a season, would you be the same person now? Maybe not. Like you said, you probably would have a different outlook. If you went in there and you absolutely smashed it, and you're playing as a 15-year-old against or with people like Robbie Keane and Bellamy and that, and then obviously what happens between 15 and 20, because that's obviously a long time. It's 5 years. So then what would you it could have taken you anywhere. You could have gone down the negative route and spiraled out of the game, and there's a whole heap of different kind of variables that could have happened. So it all depends. And you mentioned one thing there that I kind of resonate with. So I was in a similar scenario at Leicester, whereas I was 17, 18, still eligible to play in the youth team. I'm born in May, so I've got like a young birthday anyway, but 17, 18, standard youth team age. But I was playing reserves as well, and also training with the first team. So in some ways, I didn't really know where I stood. Like, was I in the first team or on the fringes of that? Was I fully in the reserves? So I remember still, to this day, training in the first team, playing reserves, and then still having to go and play in the youth team. So physically demanding, but also mentally as well. Like, at the time, you probably don't realise because you just want to play. Didn't really feel tired or anything. You just want to play. You're happy to play in the reserves, do well, train with the first team, hopefully get a shot in the first team. But then you have to play with the youth team as well. So from that perspective, it could be quite confusing. I don't think that necessarily happens to players now. I think they get looked after a lot more.
Yeah, of course.
Thoughts are on that?
No, I agree with you, mate. I think, because the way it was back then, you look at it now, and I look at this 23s football now, and you think, like, it's so far away from where we played. I remember playing at Highfield Road, mate, against like your Leicesters and your Villas, and I remember playing Chelsea, and it was who was the manager? I think it was Claudio Ranierio's first game. We played in front of like 7,000 people.
Yeah.
in the reserves. And like at Highfield Road, you imagine, I remember the games against Leicester, it would be like 2,000-3,000 people there.
Easily, easy.
Yeah, and I watch them now, mate. I watch a lot of 23s football, and it's not for me, mate, 23s football. I think
Waste of time.
it's a waste of time, mate. And I think I done an article in this week's non-league paper in terms of these kids are being set up to fail. They are not being educated properly. They're never going to make it, or 99% of them are never going to make it. I think they should have to do a stint in non-league because ultimately that's where they're going to end up. They have to, and I'm talking a good couple of months as part of their education. I think they need to start doing stuff, you know, like the American sort of scholarship programs, where the NFL and the basketball, their education is just as important as it is their sport. Now, if that comes into England, added the fact they have to go and have a work experience in a non-league.
Yeah.
You know, because ultimately, I'm a manager now, so we had a lad from Doncaster when I was at Bradford Park Avenue. Now, bearing in mind that's not a Cat 1, Cat 2, he's probably a Cat 3 at Doncaster, but he comes to National League North, and his attitude and application was nowhere near like where he should be. And you know, I had an argument with Gary McSheffrey. The youth team player went back and told him a complete lie, and Mac had sort of had a little go at me, Macca, which is very naive and Macca, and I rang him straight away. I said, Macca, listen, mate, I've never told a lie in my life. This is what happened. This is where you are. This kid will no longer be, this kid won't make it as a football player. And this is the reason why. He went to another club. I think he went on loan to Gainsborough. He was there for one game, got sent back. So if we can see this as people, then they should be seeing that. But obviously with this 23s football now, the managers get money. Every player that goes into the first team, they get X amount of money. If they win their under 23s league, they get X amount of money. And you know, for some of these people, mate, it is about a money thing for these managers. Where you know, I could watch a game of football. I could go into Coventry's youth team today. I can go and watch it, and I will tell you within half hour who's going to make it, who's going to go higher, who's going to be in League Two, who's going to drop to the conference. And unfortunately, who's going to be working in Asda in 2 years? Because we know and understand football, but these people keep these kids in there and sell them the dream. And then once they get to the end of their sell-by date, they just push them off and replace them with a new breed coming in. And you're not giving these kids the best possible chance of mentally securing themselves in terms of a mental state.
100%. And I think in some ways, or in most cases, they're living in a false world. It's a false world in terms of on and off the pitch. So a lot of these players who you've never heard of and never will hear of, okay, own a lot of money. If you're 16, 17 and you're on, if they bought you from, let's say, Spain, straight into the youth team, no one really knows, it's not in the papers that they've signed you, you just come in. So invariably, that football club knows about you and no one else really does. They put you on, say, let's call it $5,000 a week, which isn't amazing in like the higher echelons of football. Yeah. $5,000 a week for 3 or 4 years, if you save your money, you can kind of live off that, or you can make something of it going forward. Where's your motivation? Where is it? There's nothing there. And then you're going to go and play in the under-23s league where there's 50 people watching on a good day. It's just false. There's nothing there to play for. So when we played reserves, sometimes you'd be playing and there'd be like senior players, internationals coming back from injury. They don't want to be there, so they're going to play their best to try and get back into the first team. But for us, when we're playing against the likes of Bellamy and that, because he's coming back from injury and it's less top, we want to test ourselves against Bellamy and people like that. So it raises our game. But these under-23s, it's like, we used to call it easy-ozy football, tippy-tappy. It just means nothing. You have it, we'll have it. If we win 3-0, it just means nothing. No one's playing for anything. There's no mortgages at stake or rent at stake or whatever, win bonus, whatever. Because all of that accumulates to how you play on the pitch. And again, you mentioned the managers keep these players on. If someone makes it into the first team, they get a little bonus. Trying to sell the dream. They don't make it into the first team or whatever. They just discard them. Because as you know, as a player, you're just an asset anyway. So that's all it is. And again, sometimes parents get roped into it as well. They get roped into it, and people don't see, from outside looking in, they don't realise that if you're living in London at your parents' house and Newcastle want to sign you as a 16, 17-year-old, okay, the whole family gets uprooted from London to Newcastle. And again, let's say your family's from not a well-to-do family, so you're living on the breadline, let's call it for argument's sake. you're going to look at that opportunity and think they're going to put us in a nice 3 or 4 bedroom house, all paid for. You're going to go training every day. They're going to give you 4 or 5 grand a week. That will cover us as a family. Mum and dad don't have to work anymore. Happy days. What happens 2 years later, though, when that player gets released? Back to London, on the breadline again, the player don't want to play football anymore. So they need that grounding on and off the pitch. It's just crazy. I see it all the time. I just think, like, back in our day, 18, 19, if you're not in the first team, I'm banging on the door. I want to, like, get out. I want to go and play first team. And ultimately, that's what I did. But yeah, I mean, you touched on some amazing things here. And I just want to ask, like, what was it like when you dropped out of the leagues? Because obviously you played at Cardiff, you made your debut, and you had a bit of a time like in the first team, and then you dropped down the levels and you kind of found your level to a certain degree because you were there for a period of time. How was it like physically and mentally for you?
To be honest with you, mate, I found the level was where I needed to be at that particular time in my life. Made sense. It was where I could do what I needed to do off the field, but still capable of being a good player on the pitch. Like, you know, you played with me. There's no way I should have ever played in a conference. No. But what I did do is it gave me the platform to carry on doing things off the field, and also giving me my fix for football, and still being paid quite well. And, you know, ultimately that's my problem, is that it was too late before I got back into the Football League. And, you know, I was at the conference from 19 or 20 to, well, it's sporadic. Probably my whole career, mate, I've been renowned as a conference player. I know I played about 100 times in the league, championship, and won League One and won League Two and that. But predominantly, mate, you'd class me as a journeyman non-league player. And the majority of that was purely down to get money, how I could get money to let me carry on doing things off the field, to still get my fix on the field, to show people what I could do. You know, even when I used to carry weight, mate, the ability's never going to change. And that it's not a regret, because obviously that's what drives me now. So I've got a chance to re-educate myself and other people, and I've got a second chance. Now, if I do it the second time, if I fail as a manager by making the same mistakes, then I've got an issue. But this is my redemption, or a sort of a way of sort of getting way back. And as I've said, is, you know, I've had a few Football League jobs, interviews, and I was linked with a Tranmere job this week. And yeah, so as I say, mate, I'm building up a different perception of myself as a manager and a person, which ultimately was always been there, but was always blighted by the off-field stuff, which, you know, I've always been a good person. I've always been a nice lad. But ultimately, when your head's that completely gone, you just sort of play into a role, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Didn't know who I was. I didn't know who I was, what I was, and now I do. So I don't need to please anyone. As long as my missus, my kids are fine, the rest of the people, I don't care. I'm just me. So, and that's the way I am at the minute.
That's amazing, mate, and that's a good outlook to have. To be honest, I mean, essentially that's me anyway. I go to work, come home, I just chill with my family. I don't get involved, or try not to get involved in any drama. I'm not a people pleaser. I just do what I need to do, essentially. So again, I'm not telling people how to suck eggs, but that's my outtake on it anyway, and I think that's a good way to kind of have going forward. In terms of you, then, I'm assuming obviously when you're playing low leagues, you obviously felt frustrated down there because your ability was ridiculous in terms of that. But you obviously found yourself in lower leagues. You found yourself playing at Fleetwood with Vardy. So this is a kind of, I don't know, we've all spoke about it before, and kind of we've seen it on the media and stuff, kind of dream come true. You obviously played at that level, and then you've kind of come through, and he's obviously gone into the Championship, played for England, and obviously now he's probably one of the best Premier League strikers ever, essentially. So you played with him. Could you see it coming? What was his mindset like? What would you give in terms of advice to any players that you're kind of coaching or come across?
I would say, and this don't take this the wrong way, or I want to come across as big-headed, but if you were to say you were the top 3 or 4 football players at Fleetwood, you wouldn't put Vardy in the top 3.
I'm glad you said that, because I've said this to a few people before, and I said, I remember playing against you guys, and I said, if I was looking at Fleetwood, No, it wouldn't be. I wouldn't be naming Vardy. If you take all the hysteria away, because obviously when he was being linked to Leicester and other clubs, everyone was talking about him. But prior to that, and even when you analyse that scenario, I still watch and think, okay, he just looks like a standard lower league striker who's scoring goals. So it wasn't rubbish, but your
No, he
team
wasn't
was
rubbish, no.
decent.
I think because you've got to remember they bought me for 100 grand from Wrexham. They bought Danny Rose from Newport, who was a very good football player at Pompey and Newport and a few other
Yeah.
teams. Then you had Mangy as well, who was a fantastic football player. You had Peter Kavanagh, and I remember because Nicky Eden was the chief scout at the time when he was at Leicester.
Okay.
And when they went to sign him at first, West Brom, I think it was Roy Hodgson, I think.
Yeah.
They were like, he's not even the best football player at Fleetwood's team.
Wow.
The difference is what he had was a real desire and a real hunger to hurt people. Now, if that was tackling, it was sprinting, it was finishing. We had a team full of wrong-uns at Fleetwood. And I'm talking like every single player was a wrong-un.
Really?
Yeah, we had a squad with 20 wrong-uns all in the team. I never remember Mickey Mellon doing a team talk. I remember us beating teams 5-0 and we're fighting in the change room.
Wow.
It was a group of people. If you wanted to play football against us, we'd play football against you. If you wanted to have a fight, with Steve McNulty, Jay Maguire, Gareth and myself, we could do anything we wanted to do. And some of the things that season was bonkers. I can't describe to you. It was a unique group of players who just all had the same mindset of just want to win.
That surprises me. I understand the winning mentality, and obviously you guys were flying. And I remember playing there, and I don't think you were there at the time. I think you left, but I played, and I remember scoring there. But I remember obviously playing, and you guys had Vardy and Isaac and others that you mentioned, and how you guys played and how you guys came across on and off the pitch. It always seemed structured and organised, and as if you went out and played how you trained or whatever. So to hear now that sometimes you win 3 or 4-0 and then you'd be fighting in the dressing room and the gaffer didn't really coach you and stuff like that, and you said you had a team of wrong-uns, it sounds like a different team to me.
Don't get me wrong. Mickey Monday to Friday would walk around the training ground. Craig Madden would take the sessions.
Yeah.
we led the, any sloppy pass was not accepted. Anything wasn't accepted. Don't get me wrong, mate. Mickey would come in and coach on a Friday, but ultimately the way we always just found a way to win games now. And that's probably good management from Mickey, really, that he just allowed us to manage ourselves. And I remember we played Alfreton one game, and we were playing a game, and I don't know who it was. One of them smashed me or Peter Kavanagh. I'm not sure who it was. So Steve McNulty sort of kicked the ball out of play within play, got us all in a huddle. He said, right, no football today. If these want it, we'll have it with them. Jay, first tackle, first header, go and smash someone, and we'll all get in and have a massive ding dong. And if you remember Nicky Law's team at the time, they were quite Paul Clayton. So ball went up in the air, Jay Maguire elbow straight across someone's face, all his head's bleeding, 22-man brawl, we win 5-0. And that's what we had with the team. We had a group of men who just wanted to win games of football. And it's a little bit for Mickey there. He was a good coach, mate, but he knew he had some very, very experienced, good players at the football club to know how to win games.
And could you see Vardy? I mean, aside from that, it sounds like a great kind of team ethic there, team bond. You're a real family. And to hear that story there, it's quite. You don't really hear those stories now. Football's changed slightly, but for me, that's kind of. I don't know if he was a captain, but it's a sign of a good player to kind of see what's happening on the pitch and then use that to your advantage going forward. But with regards to the Vardy thing, I just want to touch on it a little bit more. Did you see him going from there to kind of Leicester and then in the Premier League and then kicking on?
I didn't see it, to be honest with you, mate. And to be honest with you, if you look at Vardy's first 6 months at Leicester, he was probably lucky he didn't get sold back on. If you look, bear in mind, obviously we know Nicky Eden, who was at Leicester. I think Vardy was possibly still doing the same things he was doing in the conference that potentially he was doing at Leicester. And if you look at his first 6 months at Leicester, I think he was on the bench for nearly every game. It's only the second season where the Vardy kicked in, and I think he was fitter. I think he stopped doing certain things off the field. He realised that it was a great opportunity for him, and then what he's become now is his pace and his rawness and his he has got better as a football player, mate, and that's working with better coaches and better players. But the fundamentals that he's got, which are raw pace and his attitude, and he will never give anything up. He's still there from when we played Bath away. He's still there when we played Alfreton. I remember one game we played Grimsby. I think he'd been out drinking all weekend. So the gaffer put him on the bench. We were 1-0 down. He came on and scored 2. We beat Grimsby 2-1 and brought him off after 5 minutes to go. So it's like,
wow.
Yeah, mate, he's frightening, mate. He's a freak of nature, like he was.
Wow. Talk to me about Wales under-21s then, because I know you had a stint in the Wales. So how was that making you kind of debut for your nation?
I hated it, mate. I got one of the lads who now is my coach, Rhys Day. I got called up to the Argentina squad when I was 18. Again, I thought I should have been playing in the first team. I got called up 3 times to the first team. Again, I got loads of injuries, didn't play in any 16s, 18s. And the 21s, mate, Wales were like a laughing stock, really. And this is no disrespect to people who I was playing with, but I think the nearest player of any note was Jamie Tolley, who played for Shrewsbury. Yeah. And the rest of them were like for Bangor, or it was near enough embarrassing. So, I wasn't going to play for England. I had the chance to play for England a few times. I'm Welsh, and going away was a real burden, mate. I didn't like travelling. I was away on my own. I didn't really like to socialise that much with people, especially when at that point in my life, I was just like football, and it just wasn't for me, mate. And looking back at it now, I should have probably just stopped playing straight away for Wales. And I remember we won 1 game in 5 years against Azerbaijan, and it was like a big hooray of like euphoria. And I'm thinking, like, we played. Remember one game we played Italy away and we lost 7-1, and the manager played James Collins, who's the centre half, who played for West Ham, and played him up front. And Gina was at Cardiff City at the time, and I'm looking through Italy's team sheet, and they got Dalla Bona, they've got De Rossi, they had Di Agostino. But like when you're looking at their player stats, it's like Juventus, Serie A, 120 times, Champions League appearances, like 12 Champions League, they're like 18, 19. And I'm looking, thinking, I'm playing with lads who played for Bangor or Rill. And it got to a point, mate, where it was just frustrating.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't like it, man. I didn't like it at all, man.
I can imagine. I want to touch on, so the main focus for me in the podcast, because everything you spoke about is great, and I think people listening find it really interesting. But retirement. So when it came to you thinking, okay, I've had enough, or my legs just can't do it anymore, or I've got an opportunity elsewhere, what was that thought process? How did you find retirement? So coming away from football, what was your mindset like? How did you find it?
To be fair, I retired 3 times through different things, like off field, and come back to it. And there's always good money to be earned, and that's the reason I went back to it. But when I did retire at 32, I just had enough, mate. I had enough of the politics. I had enough of the. It wasn't worth the money. I mean, 350 quid or whatever it was at Telford. It wasn't worth the money to listen to the stuff I was listening to. And I just needed a complete break from it and get away completely from it. And, with me, mate, I've never had an ego. I don't care about cars and clothes and all that. Like, I just needed to get out, mate. Literally, I think I quit on the Tuesday, and I was working at Timpson's on the Wednesday or Thursday.
Really?
Yeah, mate. No. I've done it since. I've done Timpson's for 2 years, mate, which was great. Enjoyed it till the last sort of couple of months when the customers start speaking to you like shit, and you're like, you can't how you want to react as a football player, you can't, because the customer's always right, and you're in Civvy Street. And then I was a delivery driver. I worked for Amazon, I worked for Hermes, and with me, mate, as long as I provide for your family, mate, I don't care what I do.
That's the main thing, and that's commendable. And again, this is another reason why I do the podcast, to speak to people like yourself who've got a good story to tell. So you finish playing, say, let's call it Tuesday, and then Thursday, Friday, you're working for a reputable company, which is Timpson's. And again, this is a message to like youngsters or people who are kind of reaching the back end of their career. It's not just a case of being in that football bubble. And again, you've mentioned this, and I always say this about myself. I was always me first and then football a second. I didn't care if people saw me and said, oh, it never happened anyway, but oh, there's Danny who plays for X, Y, and Z. I'm not interested in all of that. I'd go and play football and whatever and try and do my best, but I was always me first, and I was always interested in kind of other people. So when it came to my retirement, I knew that if I found a sustainable job, which I did, I had no issues with that. I had no issues telling people that I'm not playing anymore. And I find some players that I've come across, and even to this day, some players that are still playing, they want to stay in that football bubble, that fake lifestyle, which isn't always there for all footballers. But there's a kind of perception, there's a lifestyle that you need to adhere to. And it's like everyone likes, say, nice cars, nice clothes, nice house, whatever. That's just normal standard procedure for everyone across the board, really. But some players are just in that. And I've met players who I know are out of contract and they're struggling for a club, but they're still driving crazy car and paying crazy car payments and that. And it's like, why? Who are you trying to impress? Anyone that looks at you and thinks, oh, well, he used to be playing for X, Y, and Z and now he's working here, and then makes a life and stuff of it, they don't need to be involved in your life. That's the way I look at
it. That's the ego, mate. That's the ego in the people coming through. You know, we had a conversation with one of our players the other day. I probably wasted a couple of £1 million myself, mate. And when I got to Wrexham at 27, I borrowed my mum's T-Red Fiesta. It had the windows hanging off. I didn't care, mate. I surrendered everything. I let go of my ego. I didn't care. You know, possibly before that, you get institutionalized in a sort of a mindset that you have to have a nice car, and you know, if before then, probably if you'd have said to me, "What are you doing driving a T-Red car?" I probably would have parked it around the corner. But at that particular moment in time, at 27 years of age, I didn't care, mate. I would have drove. If it was like a Mercedes GL or whatever you want to call it, it was perfect for me at that time, mate. And I think that's what they are with these footballers, mate. You hit a nail on the head there. Is part of my colleague column on Sunday. Is they don't know who they are. These people don't know. They just think, I'm Lee Fowler, the football player. You're not. That's your job. Who are you as a person? You know, Angus, I mentioned Dior about he was going fishing with his dad, Terry. And the lads were giving him loads of grief. And I was thinking, fair play to you. Like, he's got an outside interest with his dad, other than going to, you know, Marbella or what so sort of places. It's like Brano. I seen the one you had with Brano the other day. I remember Brano used to be materialistic all the time. I remember seeing Brano in Marbella. He'd stay out there for like 2 months. And he'd say the same thing as well. I remember I went twice. I flew out once and come back, and then flew out again, and he was still there. And I'm thinking, do you know what I mean? But and that's where that football it was at that time. Do you know what I mean? In terms like, oh, Marbella is the place to be, or Vegas and all that, mate. Listen, mate, I said to you before, as long as me and my family are happy, mate, I don't care if we go to Butlins or Haven, whatever it is, as long as we're together.
So. That's brilliant, mate. One last thing, did you get any help? So when it came to your retirement, did you get any help from any organisations, previous managers, teammates, the older teammates that are kind of more established in Civvy Street? Did they reach out to you? Did the phone ring? I know what it's like. Phone stops ringing. It didn't bother me anyway because my phone never used to ring really anyway. But some people it's different. They get lost in their identity or whatever. And you hear different stories where people will say, "Oh, I lost my identity. I didn't know who I was." Like you just said there about certain people. So again, like what was it like for you? Did you get help? Did someone say, "Lee, look, maybe have a look at doing this or whatever"?
No, mate. I just I'm the same as you, mate. I've had 27 football clubs. Managers, or that puts you in around 200 category of players, and I'm the same, mate. I keep a small group of friends to me list. I don't care, you know. I go, wish you all the best. I just kept myself to myself, mate. And when I left, I just found jobs. I knew Timpson's were good at recruitment without having much education behind me. And as I said, I just done it, got an interview, went in, started work straight away, and it was good, mate. I got, you know, no one helped me, just done it myself.
Brilliant, and that's commendable in itself. Would you say there's more help that's needed for, we always say footballers because we're obviously connected to that world, but in general, I'm generalising now, sport, when it comes to transitioning away from the game, would you say there's more help that's needed?
But for me, it's a topic really that why does it always have to fall on the clubs or the people? Why can't it fall onto the person or the human being? Now, ultimately, this sport, football, rugby, it doesn't owe you anything. And if you are naive enough to think that you're going to play for the rest of your career and earn thousands and millions and stuff like that, that's a bit of a a downside to your thought process. For me, I think that you have to be really astute in terms of your thinking and saying, well, hang on, I know this ain't long term. This is like a sort of, not a gimmick, but I'm going to capitalize this, and as long as I can, but ultimately this ain't going to what's going to pay my bills when I finish. So the people who like sort of, that's what I'm saying about they're being taught the wrong things and they're being set up to fail.
Yeah.
You know, I remember Coventry, mate. We had 6 lads at Coventry. They knew within the first day or 2 days of training they were never good enough to play football. But what they done is they took college 5 days a week. One of them was Graham Maffey. Graham Maffey, who's his dad's actually one of the head directors of Scottish the FA. He's now the Hibernian director of football. But he was crap. He was no way was he going to ever play football. But he knew that and took the courses on. So this is what I'm saying. For me, the person should be looking at it and going, this ain't a long-term thing. I need to get a job with this, or I need to do university with this. No, look at Joe Lolly. Joe Lolly played with us at Kidderminster. He went to university for 3 years first. Come to Kidderminster, got his move to Huddersfield, went to Forest, and now he's obviously earning £1,000 a week. But ultimately, he was good enough in the university days, but he chose university first. And it does take a... It's hard to say because obviously, when you're in that bubble, you just want to play football.
Yeah.
Now, if the first conversation you have as a YT when you're coming through the door is the same as what I had, listen, 99% of you are not going to make it. So I would, even if you are that 0.01%, I would still concentrate on education. I would still concentrate on a trade. Just because when it does go bad or an injury happens or something unpredictable where you can't control, all of a sudden you've got something to fall back in and the transition is not as hard as it should be. So I think it is a little bit of both, mate. But for me, ultimately, it's down to the player or the person as well to understand and see through all the bullshit.
Yeah, I agree with that. You need to have like the gumption and the know-how, mentally and physically, to go out there and do it yourself. Very rarely the phone rings unless you're kind of generally Gary Neville and people like that, where naturally you've got that profile and people are going to call you because they want you on their show or on their station or whatever it may be. People like us and Champions, whatever, very rarely happens. I mean, there's one in kind of a bunch of clubs that it happens to. So what happens to everyone else? So you need to have that understanding that it's not going to be there forever, and you're going to have to potentially go and work or set up your own business or something. But yeah, really appreciate you coming on today. I've enjoyed obviously catching up and listening to the story and stuff. Just let everyone know where we can find you. Obviously, you're Radcliffe manager, so let us know where kind of that is in terms of locality, where we can find you personally on LinkedIn or whatever socials you're on.
Yeah, so obviously I'm at Radcliffe now, mate, which is in Manchester. It's a great club. I'm on Twitter, Fatman Fowles, if you want to, have engaged with me and stuff. It's a bit of a play on how I was as a football player, carried a bit of weight. LinkedIn is Lee Fowler. Anyone who wants, talk about stuff in terms of help or, with mental stuff or stuff like that. I'm there to help people as well, transition, and as I say, mate, I've got a platform now to really use my experience, and I think that's going to be my USP in terms of me as a person. So if there is anyone out there who wants to chat or have a conversation, more than happy to.
Awesome, mate. And you've got a column on the non-league paper as well. Is that right?
Yeah, we've got a column in the non-league paper, mate. It's, I've had a good relationship with the editors there over the last couple of years. Dewey Hammond now has gone to Luton and Matt Boddock. It's just somewhere that they know they're going to get an honest interview. They know they're going to get a thoughtful interview in terms of, it's not your run-of-the-mill sort of quotes and stuff like that. I speak how I feel and I say what I mean and mean what I say. So it is good. If you are into that and want to see other things than just the normal stereotypical manager who bore you with keywords in it, that won't be me. But as I said, mate, I'm there for people if they need me.
Awesome, mate. Appreciate you coming on. like I said, really enjoyed it. Keep doing what you're doing. Obviously, keep putting your input forward with regards to your philosophy and your team. I'm sure you won't be there for long. If you are, then you won't be there forever anyway. Anyone that's kind of listening, they understand obviously you as a player and you as who you are now. Great ideas, mate. Great insight on kind of life and football philosophy as well. So keep doing what you're doing. I'm sure you'll be fine.
Nice one, mate.
Brilliant, mate. Speak soon.
See you later, lad.
Yeah.